A long time ago, in a kingdom where clouds always covered the sky and the air always felt cold, there lived a girl named Amara. She was not an ordinary girl. Amara was born into a very rich and powerful family. Her father was Lord Darren, one of the highest rulers in the land. People feared him more than they feared sickness, war, or even the king. His castle stood tall on a rocky hill, gray and cold, like the stone it was built from. Soldiers guarded every door, and nobody smiled unless Lord Darren gave them permission. Amara had everything people dream about: golden dresses, jeweled rings, soft beds, and servants who waited on her day and night. But all those things were like shiny cages. Her life looked perfect on the outside, but inside, Amara was trapped. She couldn't go outside without permission. She couldn't laugh too loud, she couldn't speak her heart, and she was never allowed to choose who she loved. Her father had big plans for her. He wanted her to marry a man from another powerful family, a man with no heart, but with land and soldiers. To Lord Darren, love didn't matter, power did, respect did, and Amara's feelings were not important to him. She was just a piece on his chessboard, something to move around when it helped him win. But Amara was not a piece. She was a person, and she dreamed of more than castles and cold halls. She wanted sunshine, she wanted music and stories, and the kind of love that made your chest feel warm. Sometimes she would sneak out into the castle gardens just to feel the wind or listen to the birds, something her father called a waste of time. Everyone in the castle treated her like a princess, but not because they loved her, because they were afraid of her father. No one dared to ask what she liked. No one dared to tell her a joke. No one dared to be her friend. And so, Amara lived her days, walking alone in long stone halls, sitting by her window while the clouds passed by, and wondering if anyone in the world would ever truly see her. Not the fancy clothes, not her father's name, but her. It was in one of these quiet moments that her life was about to change forever. A moment that began like any other, a walk in the garden, a step past the roses, and yet it would open the door to the one thing she was never supposed to have: love. But in a place ruled by fear, love was not a gift, it was a crime. And for Amara, that crime would come with the highest price. It was a cloudy afternoon when Amara first saw Rael. He wasn't wearing shiny. Amara noticed him because he wasn't like the others. He wasn't stiff, he wasn't cold. There was something gentle about the way he looked at the world, like he still believed in good things. For days Amara saw him from her window. Sometimes he smiled at passing birds. Sometimes he helped the kitchen servants carry heavy buckets, and sometimes when he thought no one was watching, he would close his eyes and listen to the sounds of the garden. She had never seen a soldier like that, and she had never felt curious like this before. One day she took a chance. While walking in the garden, she passed near the gate where he stood. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke, but in that silent moment, something happened. Something soft, something dangerous. The next day she came again, and the next. At first they just nodded. Then they said a few words, and then, without even trying, they were laughing, really laughing. Something Amara hadn't done in a very long time. Rael told stories of his village, of the stars, of a better world. Amara told him about her dreams, her fears, and how lonely the castle really was. Days turned into weeks. Their meetings became more secret. They walked under the trees when no one was watching. They shared stolen minutes before the sun rose. Amara began to feel something she had only read about in old books. She felt love. Not the kind her father had spoken of. Cold, arranged, lifeless, but real love. Warm, exciting, and true. But deep down, they both knew it was forbidden. Rael was a soldier with no name, no land, and no power. Amara was a noble girl, promised to another man. If anyone found out, there would be punishment. Not just for Rael, but for her too. Still, they couldn't stop. Every glance, every smile, every whispered word was a small rebellion against the cruel world they lived in. And even though fear followed them like a shadow, they held on to those moments like treasures. They thought they were being careful. They thought the walls weren't watching. But castles have many eyes, and secrets, no matter how quiet, don't stay hidden for long. Soon, someone would speak. Someone would tell Lord Darren, and when he found out, love would no longer be a secret. It would become a sentence. It was a quiet morning when everything changed. Amara sat by her window, waiting for Rael's signal, a small flower placed by the garden gate. It was their way of saying, "I'm here, it's safe." But the flower never came. Instead, a cold silence filled the castle. Servants whispered. Soldiers marched faster. Her father's door slammed shut over and over. Something was wrong. Later in her room, 2 guards came. Without a word, they grabbed her by the arms and dragged her through the dark halls of the castle. No one helped. No one asked questions. Everyone just watched. They took her to the cold stone chamber below the castle. The air smelled like dust, iron, and fear. Torches flickered on the walls, and in the middle of the room stood Lord Darren, his face like stone. "Do you think I'm a fool?" he asked. Amara couldn't speak. He already knew. A servant had seen her and Rael together. A whisper became a rumor, and the rumor reached the one person who could turn love into a death sentence. "You are promised to the house of Eldrin," he said. "You've shamed this family. You've brought filth into our bloodline." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I love him," she whispered. "He's kind. He's good." "Love," her father spat. "Love is weakness. You have forgotten your place." She begged, she cried, but her words meant nothing to him. Lord Darren had built his name on control. He ruled through fear, not feeling. To him, this was betrayal, and betrayal had to be punished. Rael had already been taken. "He is no longer your concern," her father said coldly. Amara fell to her knees. "Please don't hurt him." Lord Darren turned away. "Your punishment will be remembered for generations." She was dragged back to her room and locked inside. Outside her window, thunder rolled across the sky. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy, like tears from the heavens. All night she cried, not for herself, but for Rael, for the love they found, for the future they would never have. She didn't know what her father was planning, but in her heart she felt it, something worse than chains, worse than death. And in the shadows of the castle, the ground itself seemed to tremble, as if it too was waiting for what came next. The next morning came with thick, dark clouds. The wind was cold, and the castle felt even colder. Amara had not slept. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. She didn't know what her father would do, but she was about to find out. The door creaked open. 2 guards entered. Their faces were blank, like stone. They didn't speak. They simply grabbed her arms and pulled her from her room. Outside, the entire castle courtyard was silent. Servants, soldiers, and nobles stood in rows, eyes lowered. No one dared to speak. At the top of the stairs stood Lord Darren, wearing a long black cloak. Behind him, a scroll was unrolled. Amara was forced to kneel in the middle of the stone courtyard. "You shall be buried alive," gasps echoed at last. Amara's body froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came. "Buried alive?" She shook her head. "Please," she cried. "Father, don't do this." But he looked away. "You will be taken to the old ground, where traitors once fell. The earth will become your cell. You will return to the soil with your shame." Tears streamed down Amara's face. Her legs gave out beneath her. "This is not justice," she screamed. "This is cruelty." But Lord Darren remained still. His eyes held no love, no mercy, only the cold fire of control. Rael was nowhere to be seen. She didn't know if he was alive or already gone. That made the punishment even worse. They were not even allowed to say goodbye. The guards dragged her to a wooden cart. Her wrists were tied, her dress soaked with rain. People watched in silence, some with pity, most with fear. No one dared to help her. No one dared to look her in the eye. The cart moved slowly through the muddy roads, toward the old burial field outside the castle walls, a place where the earth was soft and the trees never grew straight. A cursed place. As she bounced along the path, Amara looked up at the gray sky and whispered, "If love is a crime, then I don't want to be innocent." And the clouds above did not answer, only the sound of wheels turning in wet soil. She was on her way to a fate that no soul should ever face. And deep beneath the ground, the hole was already waiting. The wind howled as the cart creaked to a stop. Amara looked around. The burial field was empty and silent. The trees were thin, twisted, and dead. The sky was gray, as if even the sun refused to shine on this cursed place. In the middle of the field was a hole, freshly dug, wide, deep, and waiting. Two gravediggers stood beside it, their faces hidden under wet hoods. They didn't speak. They didn't look at her. They had dug many graves before, but this one was different. This one was for someone still breathing. Amara was pulled from the cart. Her feet sank into the wet soil. Her dress dragged in the mud. She had no strength to fight anymore. Her hands were tied. Her body trembled, but her eyes stayed strong. She looked up at the sky one last time, searching for a sign, a reason, a miracle. Nothing came. Lord Darren had not come. He didn't need to. His orders were enough. His silence was louder than any shout. One of the guards stepped forward and read from a scroll. By the will of House Darren, Amara. Above her, the clouds spun slowly. Then came the first shovel of dirt. It hit her stomach lightly, then another and another. She felt the weight grow. Her chest rose with each breath. She tried to stay calm. She whispered Rael's name again and again, as if that would protect her. The dirt reached her ribs, then her shoulders. Her breaths became short. Her heart pounded. The gravediggers worked fast. Their faces stayed blank, but their hands moved quickly, as if afraid of what they were doing. Finally, only her face remained uncovered. One of the men paused. She opened her eyes and looked at him, not with fear, but with quiet strength. "I loved, truly," she said. And then the last shovel came. The world turned dark. But just before it did, Amara smiled. Not because she was safe, not because she was saved, but because in that final moment, she refused to be ashamed of her love. And the earth, thick and cruel, closed around her, carrying away her voice, but not her story. For the ground remembers the truth, and one day it might speak. The earth had taken Amara, but her story did not end there. Days passed, then weeks. The villagers near the old burial field spoke in whispers. At night, they claimed to hear a sound, soft, like breathing under the soil. Others heard weeping, or a voice calling a name, Rael. No one dared to go near. The trees around the grave grew more twisted. Animals avoided the spot. Even the wind changed direction as it passed the field. Something was not at peace. Rael had not been killed. Though Lord Darren told the castle that the boy had disappeared, he was alive, but broken. He had been beaten, whipped, and thrown out into the wild lands beyond the kingdom. Bruised and bleeding, he crawled for days, hiding from guards and wolves alike. But Rael's heart burned with one purpose, to find Amara. He didn't believe the lies. He asked villagers, bribed soldiers, and followed the whispers. It led him back to the cursed field. It was midnight when he stood at the edge of the grave. The rain had stopped, and fog floated across the ground like ghosts. Rael's hands were cracked. Rael screamed, a cry so loud it echoed through the trees. He held her in his arms, rocking back and forth, whispering that he was sorry, that he came too late, that he would never forget her. He stayed like that until the sun rose. The guards never found him. He vanished into the forest that day. But the story didn't disappear. A girl buried alive for love. A boy who returned too late. A kingdom that chose power over heart. The tale spread far beyond the cold walls of the castle. Songs were written, paintings were made, and every year, on the day she died, people laid flowers on the old burial field, whether they believed the story or not, because love, like Amara's, it refuses to stay buried. Amara's story is not just about pain. It is not only about the cruelty of powerful men or the silence of unfair laws. It is a reminder of love, of courage, and of the strength to hold on to what is right, even when the world says it's wrong. Amara loved with her whole heart. She didn't hide it. She didn't run from it. And even as the earth swallowed her, she didn't let go of that love. In a time when women were punished for speaking, for choosing, for feeling, she stood tall, even while lying in a grave. Rael, too, showed what it means to fight not with swords but with truth. His hands were torn, his soul crushed, but he returned to find the girl who once made him smile under the stars. He came not to save her, but to honor her, to let the world know that her story would not disappear. Today we look back not to feel sad, but to remember, to promise ourselves that love should never be punished, that no one should be buried for the choices of the heart. And so, if you ever feel like the world is against you, remember Amara. Remember that even when the world turns cold, the warmth of real love can live on, in stories, in songs, and in hearts that refuse to forget.